here, the relationship expert, master practice mentor, and author of the book, The Practice RX. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate that. And I hope that these trainings, the ones that you've seen so far, if you've seen the other two, if this is the first one, welcome. If you've seen the other two, I hope that they're serving you. I hope you're getting some information out of them. You know, my purpose behind these is just to serve you. Typically, all of this is stuff that I teach to my personal one-on-one clients. Well, I should say this is a fraction of the stuff I teach to all of my one-on-one clients. And in that conversation with Dr. Fran, I just see that he gets it. He sees that there can be a better way to be a practice professional. And we talked about a few things, and this is the last little area that we focused on. Actually, there's one more, which is specifically marriage. But one of the things that we talked about is body language, and how he opened up that conversation with him understanding based upon the person's nervousness or their feeling of anxiousness. He could feel that, which then in turn would give him that feeling of anxiousness. And so he has to talk himself through breathing and understanding and getting to a calm place, so therefore he can calm down the patient. And I just thought that was so insightful and so powerful for him to recognize, because unfortunately, I think that there are a lot of professionals out there who are numb to that feeling, or don't care, or just are going in to get their job done. And one of the things that I love about body language and understanding body language is that it is such a powerful non-verbal communication. You know, there are many studies out there that show that, you know, body language or non-verbal communication, that includes the body language and the tone of your voice, those actually add up to over 2/3 of the communication that you have with people. So you focus so much on the words that are actually coming out of your mouth, and really, we don't focus too much on the non-verbal part of it. And that's the part that I want to talk about today. Why? No, because not only is it such a huge part of communication, but no one's talking about it out there. And you don't understand why people are being repelled from you, or they're being attracted to you. And I truly believe that when you don't understand your body language, that you are either alienating your team and or repelling your clients. Could be both. And when I say repelling your clients, it's not just that you're repelling the clients, but your team members, when they're not aware of their body language, they actually can repel their clients. Body language can help out in sales numbers. It can help out in thorough communication. It can help people really, if you understand body language, how to help people understand you and be enrolled in the process. And my form of body language is a little different, the way I approach body language. When I go out to offices and I train on it, what I typically do is I'll go out for a day ahead of time and I'll observe the office to kind of see what's going on, interaction with each other as a team, with the doctor and the team, with the clients and the team, client and the doctor. And then the next day I'll do a full presentation using a lot of what I've seen, because I want them to be able to take it and personalize it into their life. I don't just have a canned speech. So today what I do is I want to show you a few of the things that will help out in your own body language. Now, my story is, I actually 6 years ago thought body language, actually probably 7 years ago, I thought body language was a bunch of bunk, like a woo-woo type thing, right? Like, yeah, whatever, body language. And then I went to an event, a little seminar, where a gentleman was talking about body language, great guy named Kirk Duncan, and he actually, I only went because my wife wanted to go, and my favorite Mexican restaurant was next door, and she said we could go on a date to that Mexican restaurant if I went to this body language training. I said fine. His approach was a little different, and it opened my eyes up to studying new people and understanding a lot more behind the science of it. But his approach was this: it was question-based. See, all the body language training that I'd ever seen before, or people have talked about it before, it was always based upon, how do you find out if somebody's lying to you? Or how do you know if people are being deceitful? And I don't want to know that. There's enough negativity in the world. Why would I want to know more of that, right? I could probably figure it out. You pretty much have an intuition to where you can find out if people are lying to you or not. But it's just not something I was interested in. I was busy doing my own stuff. And then he took the approach of a question-based body language, meaning that if you could learn body language so that you could ask a better question of the people around you, you know, your family, your kids, your wife, your friends, your coworkers, wouldn't that be a benefit to you? And I thought, yeah, that's actually a really cool idea. How can I do that? And so I got into the study of body language, and I really delved deep. Matter of fact, I became a trainer part-time for this company on body language because I felt so attracted to it. And I love that it helped me ask better questions. And I think that the quality of your life is based upon the quality of the questions that you ask. And so I dove into this, and I really enjoy it a lot. And I want to show you a few things that are really interesting. Now, you might be somebody who's sitting there going, oh, whatever, body language, okay, whatever, and you're still feeling that way, right? The same way I did 6-7 years ago. But now there's so much science behind it to back it up. As a matter of fact, there is a study that was done, and it's fascinating, where they actually measured the testosterone levels and the cortisol level of people who did a certain stance that we're going to get to in a moment. But one of the base things that they studied was people who were blind from birth. And why do they react the same way in some situations that people who are seeing from birth react? So, for example, when a blind person from birth never had seen any type of color in their life, never seen another human being to mirror, when they win at something, they win a race, when they find victory, they do this. Just like somebody who was sighted does. They, when they're sad, their face goes sad. When their face is happy, they have happy. They don't know what that should look like, but their body just naturally does it. So it tells you a little bit behind that science of, oh yeah, when you think about it, body language is actually innate into our DNA. It's something we've used for years and years and years. And some of you that are a little more in tune with your intuition and kind of the presence of people, you'll see, you know what I'm talking about, where you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Now there's obvious body language that you look at and you're like, you know that's happening. But there's also a lot of miscommunication. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I do in my body language training is I will say, okay, everybody, just pretend you're going to the Christmas party, and over in the corner of the room, you see somebody standing like this. What do you think what do you think about them? And I'll get all these different types of answers. Oh, they're cold, they're standoffish, like a cold person. They're standoffish, they're disinterested, they don't want to be bothered, all these things. And then I say, well, which one is it? The problem with body language is that we often look at it through our own filters. And so therefore, we make a judgment. And the very first rule in body language, when you're reading it correctly to find questions to the answers you want, then you have to take out judgment. It is the first rule of body language is to remove judgment. And because that judgment is based upon your own experience, your own life, whatever, and until you ask a question, you'll never know. So I'm going to go over a few things here. I'm going to do some writing up on the flip chart here, just to talk about a few things. The first thing that I want you to do is, no matter where you are right now, if I'm assuming you're at a desk somewhere watching this on a computer, unless you're watching this on the phone, but if you're at a computer, what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and stand up right now, right where you are. And go ahead and do the old Superman or Wonder Woman page, depending on your sex, pose, and just stand just like this. Now, if you notice, this is a stance that cops use, military use, and what it is, it's called splaying, and it actually makes you bigger than what you are. That's the physical part of what it's doing, but on a chemical level in your brain, what's happening is the cortisol levels in your brain are going down. What is cortisol level attributed to? Stress. And the opposite is happening is your testosterone levels are going up. What is testosterone related to? Yeah, relaxation and confidence. So what you're doing right now is when you stand in this pose for 2 minutes, so let's just say you've ever had a situation that you're going into where it's a little stressful, or you're nervous, or you want some more confidence. Stand like this, feet firmly on the ground. I know you can't see my feet, but feet firmly on the ground, hands on your hips, and just splay for just 2 minutes. And all of a sudden, in your brain, they've measured this, chemically, your cortisol levels are going down and your testosterone levels are going up. It's pretty fascinating. There's a lot of different little studies like that, but one of the things I want you to get is that body language isn't about whether you're doing something right or wrong. It's about finding out what you're doing that's weak or strong. So when I say that that you can repel people, you'll start noticing that people who have a movement in their life, in their arms, I should say, as they're talking to people, that push things away, always doing movements where it's away from them, that actually registers in the recipient of that communication subconscious that you really don't want them to be around you, that you don't want their involvement with you, and you're pushing them away. Whereas the exact same thing the exact opposite is true, which is when you are doing things that are a circular motion coming towards you, it reads their subconscious that you want them to join them. You'll notice the difference, and you can see it in politicians that have been trained, I should say. There's some really bad politicians out there. Actors, anybody who is in an area of influence, that they're typically looking at motions that are bringing them into them, that people will be coming towards them. And that's what you need to be doing as a leader, which is more come on board with me. And when you want them to do something for you, or a new way of looking at your office, or a new procedure you want, have them coming here and bringing in here, as opposed to, you guys, look, you're always doing this and you're always not doing this, and that's pushing them away, and that's really repelling. And with clients too, it can do the same thing, where you're just saying, look, you're not brushing, are you? And if you're not going to brush, then it's, you're not really brushing, and I'd really like to see you brush a little bit more. And those little movements help out them saying, oh, I want to join him on that journey, whatever that journey is. So once again, it's not about right or wrong, weak or strong. I'm only going to go through a few things with you. I've already taught you a few things. Hopefully those have been helpful. I'm just going to go through a few things with you. The first thing we want to look at, I'm just going to draw a little body up here, because that's about the stretch of my artistic talent there. So the first thing we're going to look at is, we're actually going to look at, we said the power stance, which is you putting your hands on your hips. But there's also one thing that can really weaken your conversations with people, which is what we call the fig leaf. It's when, I don't know if you can see it, I don't know if I'm back far enough on the camera, but it's when you're covering up your private parts, and men and women both do this. You can do this for security reasons, but for the most part, when I see this, when I see a leader who is holding their hands in front of them like this, and they're trying to give instruction, or they're around the opposite sex especially, this is called the fig leaf, appropriately so. But it tells me that that person has some form of emasculation going on, meaning that they don't feel comfortable in their power of their energy, male or female. And they're being kind of pushed down, or they're used to being pushed down around people. This is actually one of the biggest signs that I look for when I go into offices, when it comes to the leaders of the office, when it comes to the owners like yourself, that if they're having a conversation with somebody and they even take their, let's just say they take their paper and they put that in front, or some way that they cover themselves up. There's a couple of things going on here, not only the fig leaf to hide up their, their energy, but also what's going on in here, we'll talk about in a moment, what's happening in their stomach area. But that's one for sure. But what I want you to realize is, I want you to realize that there are three main zones that people will be attracted to or repelled from. And what that is here you've got your main zone. Well, I don't know how to, let's say I'll do this 12 feet out. That's your public safety zone, right? You can pretty much run away from anybody and nobody's threatening you at 12 feet away. And then you've got your 3-foot zone, which is your friends and personability and phone zones, where you can go in and talk to people. It's the handshaking zone, right? And then there's the 1-foot zone. And this is really important for you. Why? Because you spend the majority of your time in the 1-foot zone. The majority of your time with patients is not only in that real intimate zone, this is the intimate zone, but it is in a very dominant position too, because you're over them. Typically, you're going to lay the person back and you're going to roll up to them, and they're put in a very vulnerable position for you. The challenge is you don't know that person's backstory. You don't know how that person, what's gone on in their life. And you just assume, or you get into the routine of, hey, I'm just coming up doing my job, which is correct. And you need to have some more sensitivity to the fact that they might not be used to it and they need you to enter their zone. So I always suggest, number one, it starts all the way back with the way when they arrive at the office, which we won't get into now, but that's a big part of our training, is to teaching your front office team on how to correctly approach people so that it's easier for you and easier for them psychologically to be able to get the job done. Because what you got to understand is that if you're not doing this correctly and you're approaching them and just coming into their world and coming into their intimate zone without them knowing or without their permission, then their brain is going off in so many different ways that they're not fully listening to your instructions or what you want. Plus, you're doing sometimes you're doing some sort of trauma thing on them, right? Where you're causing some sort of discomfort. And they're thinking about all those things, plus the fact that you just walked right into their intimate zone. So those can be challenges. So what I always say is that let's just pretend that the patient is here, that when you get into this zone here, you want to grab the chair or somewhere around them or even the top of their shoulder and speak to them from here and say, "Hi, little Joey," or whatever his name is. "How are you doing today?" "Good, okay." And watch their face as you come in to them. And this is gonna be really important. You're gonna watch their eyes. You're gonna watch the muscles around the eyes here. And if you see them do any type of flare in their eyes, it might be hard for you to see it there, but their little flare in their eyes, or in here, the muscles here they can't totally control. It's kind of like the pupils in their eyes, right? It'll show you an exaggerated version of what's going on in their pupils. But as they do that, as they flare, that means that you're coming too close. You can practice this actually with people in your office, that you can actually start walking up to somebody, and as soon as you walk up to them, just look straight at their eyes and see where they flare, and the moment they flare, just kind of step back a little bit. Don't continue forward, because this happens in the public world, not just people laying down, but when we're in their zones, we get to that 12-foot zone, they're fine, they're totally safe and secure. But when we start moving forward and we get 5 feet away, 3 feet away, 1 foot away, like there's always, you'll see it in their eyes. They'll tell you when you've gotten too close. When in the body language training, we have volunteers from everybody in the team members. We have different volunteers, and I will point that out when I go to say hi to them, or when I approach them. We're in a safe place, right? It's not a threat. It's a matter of their body, their subconscious is saying, that's close enough. And until you get more permission, which the permission for somebody laying in a chair, all it is you have your hand on them, you see them and watch their eyes, and as you see their eyes flare, just keep talking to them, stop, talk to them, and say, "Okay, so are you ready to get this thing going on? Or are you ready to get started?" "Yeah, okay, we're good." And then ask permission to get into their world. It's really, really important for you to understand how powerful that is. Now, the eyes will tell you a lot. And I love the eyes training. Once again, I know I'm going through this kind of quickly. I just want to give you a few tips because we mentioned it just a little bit with Dr. Fran. But let's look at the eyes. And by the way, the eyes and the mouth are something that your salespeople, whether it be your hygienist or if you have a TC or anybody in your office who is involved with contracts or sales, you should really have them learn more about body language because they can see so much that's going on here. They'll be able to find out and ask questions that maybe the person isn't willing to ask until you bring it up. And I know that sounds silly, like if they're on them, they should actually want to bring up any questions they have. But actually, if you catch it now, it'll stop problems from happening later on. It's really, really powerful. So we're going to go through this. It's excellent for sales. I'm just going to give you 2 eyes. There's 5 eyes that we teach, but I'm going to give you 2 of them just for time's sake. And so what I want you to do is, if you have a piece of paper or anything, draw 2 circles. These aren't the eyes, by the way. These are 2 heads. And on there, I want you to draw eyes within the circles. I'm just going to give you 2. The first one is going to be looking right or looking left. And I'm going to dispel a myth here that I know is out there. You might have heard it before in some other training. When we look at that, we have to look at it from the person's perspective. So it's their right and their left. So as I'm looking at you now in the camera, you're seeing me. This is my right. This is my left. Yours is opposite, right? So you got to swap it, right? Does that make sense? So when somebody is looking over into their right, they're actually tapping into the right hemisphere of their brain, which for most people, well, for all people I should say, but when people tap into that, it's their creative side. It's the what to do. It is their future. And this allows them to see these things in that perspective. There's a whole bunch of other stuff here, but we're just going to tap into these things. So when somebody taps into the right side, one of the myths that's been out there is that if somebody looks to the right, then it means that they're lying to you. There's a whole training, some of you have probably heard about this or not or read about it. They'll say, oh yeah, if they're over to the right, then they're lying to you. That's actually not true. They just might be a more creative person, and they're coming up with a creative answer based upon the future self, okay? So, and what they want to see of themselves in the future. But this is somebody who you want to talk to when you see them over to the right and get more clarification. So I always use this really simple example, but my daughter Avery is our most creative child. We have 3 kids, and she's our middle child. She's the most creative. And when she was younger, when we would say, hey, Avery, did you clean your room? And she goes, yeah, I cleaned my room. Now, I exaggerated the right side look, but you have to be willing to look very quickly. But she says, yeah, I cleaned up my room. And we see that. We could get into an argument by being like, Avery, no, you didn't. That's not true, right? That's if you were to take that lying idea. But instead, we want to ask a better question and get more thorough answers. So we see her looking over to the right. So I'm going to say, okay, Avery, well, is it mommy clean, or did you just kind of shove stuff around? And then she'll say, oh, well, yeah, I just kind of shove stuff around. All right, well, how about you go up and make it mommy clean? Now we avoided a conversation, and we both have clarity, and now she knows what is expected of her instead of getting into an argument. Very simple example, but this can happen in conversations with employees. Like, hey, did you fill out that paperwork thoroughly? Yeah, I filled it out. Okay, well, did you fill it out with the information that we talked about the last time that we had some missing parts, or not? Well, yeah, I mean, I like, you get the idea, like, paperwork thoroughly, cleaned out that area thoroughly, talked to this person, anything that's in a creative level. And then of course there's a right side, which we won't get to now. But the other one I want to talk about is looking down. And looking down is a matter of looking into your emotions. So anytime we're dealing with anything in the stomach area, I kind of mentioned it with the fig leaf thing, that you're covering up this area here. Well, this area also is emotions and how you feel about things. So we talk in our training a lot more about why words kind of get stuck and emotions get stuck in our body in different areas. Well, the stomach and the gut area, it's a really big one to hold emotions. So if you're dealing with someone in a sales situation or having to make a decision of any type and they look down, know that they're looking for the emotion, because people, people buy things emotionally first and then back it up with logic, right? If your salespeople are not learning these type of sales techniques, or that type of sales technique, I should say, or body language, or ways to improve their sales, that's a big challenge. But this helps out a lot, obviously. But if they're looking down, one of the challenges becomes the uncomfortableness of either you or your salesperson. And so you'll want to break that tension, right? You want to make a joke or whatever. And that's a mistake. When you have somebody who you've asked a question to and they look down, know that they're searching for how they feel about the thing. And so you need to stop and just wait and wait and wait until they come up with the answer. And when they come up with the answer, 2 things have to happen. Number 1, you have to be there. You can't be on your phone. You can't be looking around. You have to be attentive and wait for them, because if they come up and you're connected, they'll feel that from you, and that's powerful there. But 2 things. The second thing is this, is you have to take that answer as how they're really feeling. That's not to say that you can't overcome objections, because that might be the objection. They're feeling a different objection. They're feeling an objection about something. But know that that's how they feel about it. It's not about logic. It's not about how they're thinking. It's about how they're feeling about it. These 2 eye movements are really important in the sales conversation. In the, I talk about in the other training about bringing out the core values and showing a new hire and see if they're willing to adhere to all of these things. Look and see what they're doing with their emotions, and see if they're looking down and feeling that, all right? Not on a logical level, on an emotional level, because that's going to really keep them connected to the answer that they give. In that same sense, with your TCs or your salespeople, the eye flare works the same way. So if they're reading through the contract or looking at stuff, and once again, you have to have an attentive salesperson to have them looking at the face. But if they're reading through, let's just say they have a piece of paper here and they're reading through something, and you see their eye flare, I'm over exaggerating, I know, but you have to see their eye flare or them do a little know that that's a question they have about it. And your job, or the salesperson's job at that point, is to say, so are there any questions I can answer for you at this time? Or if you know what area they're looking at and you know that there are commonly questions in that area, then say, I'd like to answer a few questions about this area, or I'd like to explain a little more detail about this area of the contract. That's going to put in the person's mind that you stopped and you recognized, they didn't know you recognized and why you recognized it, but their subconscious is going to go, oh, wow, they get me, that's cool. And that's going to create a connection between you or your company and that client that is worth gold. So that's what you really want to do. And then last thing you want to do is, the last tip I'm going to give you before you go is about the mouth. And this will help you when you're doing leadership trainings or anything or obviously with another client or anything like that. But when people close their mouth in the middle of you talking or start biting their lip, doing things like that, it means they have something to say. They're literally biting their lip. That's why we have those phrases, right? A lot of those phrases come from actually what happens in body language. But if you see somebody who's listening to, and all of a sudden, and you'll see it get deeper. Matter of fact, if you watch kids, little kids are great about this. The more they have to speak and they can't, the more they have to control themselves. Because at first it's a subconscious thing, right? They'll just shut their mouth. And then they'll start biting their lip. And then it'll get a little deeper. And then they'll actually bring their hand up. And then they'll cover their mouth because they're literally stopping themselves from saying something. But for you, as a leader, and as somebody who wants them to know that you see and hear them, that when you see that, it is so important to say, hey, Sally, do you have a question on anything here? Hey, Sally, what questions do you have about this? Which, by the way, is a better way to phrase any question, right? What questions do you have as opposed to what questions do you have? Because what questions you have kind of puts them in a defensive stance, whereas, do you have any questions put them in a defensive stance? What questions do you have actually about this or about the thing or whatever? That actually puts them in you're asking for their opinion. It's actually more of a pleasant way to have that conversation as opposed to feeling that they're put on the spot. So when you see that and you see somebody biting their lip or holding their lip or tapping their lip like this, know that they want to say something. And be willing, and when you ask that of them, hey, so what would you like to say about that? Or what questions do you have about that? Their subconscious, again, registers going, oh, wow, man, they heard me, they got me, and I didn't even say anything. They're not saying that themselves consciously, but subconsciously they are, and it creates that connection. So you can see how powerful that could be in a sales conversation, in a conversation over contracts, or a conversation over, why they're not brushing their teeth regularly, or a conversation on any type of, any number of things where you want to get more to the bottom line of what they're asking or what they need, and where you actually can create a connection with them. So I've been trying to rush through this really quickly. I didn't want you to be here too long. I hope you took some notes. I just wanted to give you a couple little tips that can help you out in your office and how you can stop alienating your team and really repelling clients, because it really does. It's powerful how it works when everybody in the office knows how you can connect with all the people that come into your office and how you can have a better team, because you're all working together. It's funny because when we do the body language training, the next day and the week after, it's always people going hey, why are you doing that? So what's that about? They're quizzing each other because they learn so much. It's a super fun environment that we do it in, and we just have a great time. So anyways, I hope this served you. I hope these quick little tidbits, I know I was rushing through stuff, but I hope it gave you some basis of how you can use body language in your own practice. Once again, have a great day. Thank you so much for this opportunity again, and thank you to all of DentalTown for watching these, and I appreciate it, and we'll see you at an upcoming event.